But before that, let me give credit where it is due. There is one promise Mr. William Ruto made to the people of Kenya, and he has delivered 100%. Congratulations, Mr. President. Mr. Ruto, you promised to permanently retire the late Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, in Bondo and finish ODM. You have succeeded in both. Odinga is permanently retired in Bondo and ODM is no more. There are many prominent deaths that have occurred in Kenya and they have not been resolved. Kenyans want to know what happened to Raila Odinga. Why were the medical doctors of the late Prime Minister denied access to him at the last hours? Why did he have doctors from Nairobi West Hospital, a hospital closely associated with William Ruto, than his own doctors? Why were the instructions of Raila's doctor ignored that Raila should in travel? Raila Odinga was a respecter of Luo traditions and custom. How could a person known respecter of Luo traditions and customs indicate that he should be buried in 72 hours against all known Luo traditions and customs? Was William Ruto anywhere an executor of Raila Odinga's will? Why was there no postmortem done on the body of Raila Odinga? Why was he forced to go to India through a private jet? Why did the president force Raila Odinga to go to India? Why was his party ODM taken over before his body arrived in the country, despite the known African customs that you don't inherit a man or a woman for that matter before they are buried? Who are these doctors who accompanied Raila Odinga against the wishes of his personal doctor, Professor David Oluoch-Olunya? These are hard questions that Kenyans want to know. On the death of Honorable John Ngeno, the late MP for Emurua Dikil, for the first time, Kenyans must know what happened. I have intelligence information as follows. On the fateful day after Ngeno was dropped at Edebes, the helicopter went to fuel in Eldoret. The pilot didn't know the fuel he was about to put in had been transported to the scene from Lodwar. High alert Kenya revenue officials noticed an unusual car that had carried the jet fuel. It was arrested and the driver questioned. The driver refuted to them that he transported the fuel from Lodwar. Immediately, this KRA official and the police Eldoret Airstream were instructed from Nairobi to release the driver if they cared about their lives. Is it this fuel that caused the chopper not to pick up in high altitude? Is that why the pilot first came down and tried again to pick up? These are fundamental questions. What did Kipchumba Murkomen know about the people who called this KRA officer and the police at Eldoret Airstream officials? Can KEA produce the CCTV footage at the facility on this fateful date? We are still waiting for a report on what killed Johanna Ngeno. We must not forget about our gallant General Francis Ogola, the decorated Top Gun who had a stellar 40-year career in the military and perished in 2024 in an air crash. Unfortunately, to date, Mr. William Ruto, the Commander-in-Chief, has failed to release the aircraft accident investigation report to the country. Kenyans are demanding for answers. General Ogola was not an ordinary citizen. He died in active duty and service to the nation. Mr. William Ruto, what do you know about General Francis Ogola's death? Are you willing to tell the country why you allowed General Francis Ogola to fly in a Bell Hue helicopter with a questionable mechanical status? The DPP must use his powers and establish an inquest on these unresolved murders over the last 4 years. The people of Kenya have told me to demand on their behalf a public inquest on the death of Raila Odinga and all the high-profile questionable deaths in Kenya that have occurred in the last 4 years of William Ruto's presidency. I therefore call for a public inquest and proper scrutiny of the same. The following are some of Kenyans who have been abducted and disappeared recently. Mark Million Carrier, he was abducted in Nairobi. Michael Olo, abducted in Nairobi. Families wept in the Milimani High Court demanding his release. His last location was along Kagudo Road. Evans Omondi, abducted alongside Olo and Carrier. Abdulaziz Duba Molu, alias Zizo, abducted in Kiamaiko on June 23, 2026 by armed individuals in civilian clothing and police uniforms. Davis Lichuma, a rights activist seized by the masked operatives outside Parliament, later traced to a hospital heavily battered. Omwancha Clifford Evans, listed among the recent abductees by local human rights groups. Manyura Morisori Douglas, still missing following a wave of clandestine security enforcement operations. Jimmy Mtava Mwanzi, abducted in Mlolongo, not seen to date. He was abducted at the instructions of DIG Langat. Dennis Chege, an activist who was said to be involved in the Gen Z protests, vanished and remains completely unaccounted for to date. Brian Stigo, an Nakuru fisherman, who mysteriously went missing in 2022 under similar contested operations at Lake Nakuru National Park. The plan promised Kenyans that the National Coroner Service Act of 2017 will be amended to establish the Coroner General's Office. The objective and aim of this amendment was to remove the burden of investigating suspicious and police action deaths from regular police channels and DCI. Further, the amendment of the Act was aimed at removing potential conflict of interest and ensuring absolute transparency in handling and explaining deaths, enforced disappearances, or fatalities resulting from the law enforcement operations. 4 years later, this promise has not been fulfilled. National Coroner Service Amendment Bill 2026 was officially published in the Kenya Gazette on April 16, 2026, and received by the Directorate of Legal Services in July 2026. It is currently at the introduction and pre-reading stage in the National Assembly, awaiting formal first reading and committal to the relevant departmental. Today, as I issue an accountability statement and performance audit of Mr. William Ruto's administration in the last 4 years, it is not about personalities. It is about evaluating promises with performance, commitments with delivery, and expectations with outcomes. Patriotic Kenyans, our Constitution recognizes the presidency as an embodiment of national unity, deriving its authority and legitimacy directly from the sovereign power of the people. For this reason, the performance of any administration must always be assessed with honesty, fairness, and fidelity to the facts. Mr. William Ruto premised his manifesto with these words, and I quote, "On August 9, 2022, you'll be called to choose between two roads. One leads to constitutional democracy, institutionalized politics, and opening the doors of opportunity to the many. The other takes us back to the imperial presidency, deeper into personalization of power, and to the inevitable and practicable end of economic apartheid that we see so often around the world. The power is in your hands," close quotes. When he was presenting this choice, little did we know that he was presenting the latter. Today, we have an imperial presidency, economic apartheid, and power under a ruthless dictator. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Ruto pledged to invest 250 billion Kenya shillings into the agricultural sector to shift the country from food security to surplus production. Recognizing its strategic importance, he pledged to transform the agricultural sector by increasing productivity, improving farmer incomes, and revitalizing key value chains. The administration committed itself to revamping underperforming export crops, expanding emerging high-value crops, strengthening the tea value chain, supporting food security, and promoting agro-processing as a driver of economic growth. Despite the commitments made, our farmers have experienced increased economic hardship. Net incomes have reduced due to increased cost of inputs, higher taxation rates, high transport and distribution costs due to reclassification of VAT status. Agriculture continues to receive approximately 2% of the national budget, significantly below the African Union 10% target under the Maputo Declaration. The tea sector has faced considerable challenges over the past 4 years. This is due to the deterioration of Kenya's economic economic and diplomatic relations with Sudan. Historically, one of the largest buyers at the Mombasa tea auction. Sudan's annual consumption of Kenyan tea declined from approximately 10.7 million kilograms to about 1.7 million kilograms, leaving substantial volumes of tea unsold. But why has this happened? Mr. William Ruto's appetite for business and money has failed Kenya. His close association with the Sudan's RSF warlord, Mr. Hemeti, in illegal trade of gold in exchange for weapons, has reversed the gains we have made. These internationally sanctioned war criminals live in Kenya under state protection and have been issued with diplomatic passports and ID cards by Kipchumba Murkomen. U.S. Senator Jim Risch, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, while noting Kenya's NATO ally status, criticized William Ruto during a May 2025 hearing. Senator Risch questioned Kenya's loyalty following its facilitation and hosting of Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces, RSF. Rice farmers in Ahero, West Kano, Bunyala, Bura, and Mwea have also faced significant challenges. Although rice was identified as a strategic import substitution crop, import volumes approaching 1 million metric tons annually have depressed local paddy prices, leaving many farmers with unsold stock. Just recently, on 6 July 2026, William Ruto authorized the gazettement of duty-free importation of 490,000 metric tons of grade 1 milled white rice before 30th November, June 26. It estimates that this represents a missed economic opportunity exceeding 100 billion Kenya shillings if domestic production had been given priority before this duty-free window was open. Even though state sugar mills have been leased to private sector players associated with William Ruto, their principal business model is to import sugar instead of purchasing locally grown sugar from farmers. This has left 320,000 small-scale sugarcane farmers now facing an uncertain future. The targeted turning of 2 million poor farmers from food deficit to surplus producers using input finance and agricultural extension support. To date, show me one farmer in Kenya who can come forward as a testimonial. Instead, this farmer has nothing. In fact, small-scale farmers in Mwea and Ahero are currently in court trying to salvage their crop after government gazetted the importation of 490,000 metric tons of rice for importation. Tea farmers are crying. A 0.8% levy has been introduced, and this year's bonus will reduce from 45 Kenya shillings per kilo. Sugarcane farmers in Western Nyanza and Kisii, the government is unable to pay 270 million owed to them. Cane per ton has reduced from 6,500 to 5,000. Dairy farmers who have supplied milk to new KCC have not been paid for 6 months. It is further alarming that the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Program allocation dropped by 54% to 54% from 10.2 billion Kenya shillings in 2025-2026 financial year to 4.7 billion Kenya shillings in 2026-2027 financial year. This is a direct assault on the agricultural value chain. It is also important to note that alcohol and drug substance abuse is on a record high in the country. And the climax was when William Ruto appointed 2 known drug barons into his cabinet. William Ruto has therefore deliberately allowed the menace to grow in sections of the country that are not politically aligned to him. While serving as the country's deputy president, I ensured and chaired a multi-agency stakeholder meetings across country to exhaustively examine the root causes, extent, and impact of this growing disaster, with the aim of offering solutions. The initiatives were aimed at informing major government policy, measures, and prescribing interventions and actions to address alcohol and drug demand reduction, supply suppression, and harm reduction. Under my leadership then, I strengthened the intergovernment collaboration, and coordination in fighting alcohol, drugs, and substance abuse. I proposed several amendments of national and legal and county legal provisions on alcohol and drug control, coordinated and multidisciplinary licensing regime of alcoholic outlets where all stakeholders were involved, and proposed the establishment of county treatment and rehabilitation centers. I held high-level engagement sessions with the judiciary to fast-track alcohol, drug, substance abuse matters before then. William Ruto's 4 years have achieved unwarranted, excessive availability of drugs to our young people, killing them and leaving others as zombies. Mr. William Ruto had committed to addressing the inequities in Kenya's education system so as to level the playing field for all children irrespective of their background. He further committed to equitable universal basic education defined as 12 years of schooling. He further committed himself to protecting and strengthening the gains made under free primary education and free day secondary education, while ensuring that every Kenyan child had access to quality, affordable, and equitable education. He also pledged to strengthen higher education financing and invest in the nation's human capital. The William Ruto government inherited landmark education reforms introduced by previous administrations. Free primary education launched in 2003, free day secondary education introduced in 2018, that had significantly expanded access to education for millions of Kenyan children. The commitment was not only to preserve these gains, but to build upon them by ensuring adequate capitation, sustainable financing, and improved access to quality education for all. In the words of the third president of the Republic of Kenya, the best president we have ever had, Mzee Mwai Kibaki, and he said, and I quote, "Education is the ultimate means of ensuring an equitable society. Equitable education ensures that every child has a chance to fulfill their potential and rise to the highest level of accomplishment," close quote. 4 years later, the government has caused irreparable instability and confusion in the education sector. The gains made by the previous administration under free primary education and free day secondary education have been eroded to dust. Secondary school parents now showed a substantially higher education cost, while the level of government capitation has failed to keep pace with inflation and rising operation costs. The capitation rate established in 2017 was 22,000 per student. However, today's schools receive only 9,000 per student during the previous financial year, creating a significant funding gap. Our public universities are facing unprecedented financial distress. University debt has increased from 60 billion in August 2022 to approximately 100.3 billion Kenya shillings, representing an increase of Kenya shillings 40.3 billion, or about 67% increase. As a result, many institutions are experiencing severe financial challenges that will affect the delivery of quality education. Further, we have had 2 university financing models in 2 years. Measured against the commitment to strengthen education, protect free basic education, and improve access to higher education, the evidence presented suggests that the sector has experienced significant setbacks, placing greater financial pressure on families and creating uncertainty for learners and institutions alike. The Republic of Kenya is in a state of lawlessness and anarchy. In 4 years, William Ruto has achieved the unimaginable. There is total breakdown of law and order. Goons have taken over the legal mandate and the role of the National Police Service. The CS for Interior, the PS for Internal Security, who are duty-bound to secure Kenyans and their property, are the key planners and financiers of goons in the country. The rule of law has been suspended in the country. The DCI Director, Mohamed Amin, has been deployed by William Ruto to provide cover-up of extrajudicial killings and abductions in the country. I've just been told that the 2 police officers who were mentioned in the death of Dr. Victoria Mutiso, they were arrested and released on orders of Kipchumba Murkomen. They were never taken to any police station. I've just now on my way here, been informed that the DCI has facilitated their relocation to our neighboring country, Uganda. Goons have become structure, rank and file of the National Police Service. It is now common to see goons being escorted by the police to carry out criminal acts against Kenyans. This was evident in the PCA Mweki attack, Kariobangi PCA attack, and ACK Witima Church attack. In fact, Mr. William Ruto carries out his development tours in Nairobi, accompanied by goons. Case in point, it has been witnessed repeatedly. The plan promised that no Kenyan will be evicted without following the due process of law and, where applicable, compensation. Unfortunately, over the last 4 years, Kenyans have not been spared the wrath of Mr. William Ruto's brutal regime and have been violently evicted from their homes and business premises. Mr. William Ruto has established an assassination network in Kenya to deal with political dissent and to assist Kenyans having an issue with one another to eliminate those they don't agree with. For example, in the 2024, during the Gen Z and Saba Saba protests, the government told us that guns were stolen from Kikuyu police station. The truth of the matter is that no guns were stolen. They never left the police station. Those guns were removed from the police records to be available to goons and rogue police officers to carry out illegal attacks and assassination of Kenyans. Look at the classic example of Dr. Victoria Mutiso, who was assassinated on 19th July 2026, and lawyer Matthew Chalo Bob on 9th September 2025 by senior police officers in a feud related to personal property. This heinous murder was planned and executed by police officers from Kikuyu police station. This police station, as I've said, is a crime scene and an assassination empire. This is a situation in 4 years William Ruto has achieved to put up an assassination team available for hire by Kenyans who may want to eliminate other Kenyans. Rachel Wandeto was doused with petrol on the allegation of having a tattoo on her breast. CS Kipchumba Murkomen IG Douglas Kaja visited her in hospital. William Ruto vowed that the killers would be arrested. They said her death was motivated by certain political leaders. The scheme was planned and orchestrated by CS Murkomen and a nominated senator. Despite William Ruto having instructed that the killers be arrested, 3 months down the line, nobody has been arrested. Nobody will be arrested because she was killed by the police. The Reverend Dumia Kariuki of PCA Nakuru, a vocal church leader, was killed by Nairobi Sierra, a squad formed by Kipchumba Murkomen to intimidate the PCA church to agree to sell their properties in Mombasa, Nairobi, Kajiado, to William Ruto. The U.S. State Department, Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labor, the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, and the Independent Medical Legal Unit have documented over 700 cumulative cases of extrajudicial killings and forced disappearances across Kenya since late 2022 when William Ruto came to power. And with, of course, notable surge tied to the 2024 Gen Z protests, where 60 young boys and girls were killed. Committee. Mr. William Ruto has also facilitated acts of transnational repression against foreigners in Kenya. More specifically, on July 24, 2024, 36 Ugandans, members of a Ugandan opposition political party, as part of a joint Kenya-Ugandan security agency operation, and were forcibly returned to Uganda. On October 18, 2024, 7 Turkish asylum seekers were abducted in Nairobi by masked men. Kenya later confirmed it forcibly deported 4 of them to Turkey in a joint security operation, citing bilateral ties, drawing severe condemnation from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and Human Rights. On November 16, 2024, Kizza Besigye, leader of another Ugandan opposition party, was kidnapped by Ugandan agents while visiting Nairobi. Kenya government officials claimed they were unaware of the abduction, but the Ugandan authorities maintained it was a coordinated action between the two governments. Tanzania journalist and human rights activist Maria Sarangi was on Sunday, 12th January 2025, almost abducted here in Nairobi. Prominent Zimbabwean constitutional lawyer and human rights defender Brian Kagoro was detained and deported from Kenya on February 22nd, 2026. Intercepted by immigration and national intelligence officers at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, he was held for over 10 hours and subsequently put on a flight back to Johannesburg, South Africa. In March 2026, two officials from the China Civil Engineering Construction Corporation were deported from Kenya amid a high-stakes dispute that arose in Kenya shillings 30 billion Kenya Railway city tender. Upon seeking a statutory review of the procurement process, William Ruto and Kipchumba Murkomen deported the complainants' local agents, clearing the way for their preferred entity, China Road and Bridge Corporation, CRBC, a company that has bagged procurement tenders worth 1.2 Kenya trillion since 2022 when William Ruto came to power. China Road and Bridge Corporation is the international conduit for corrupt proceeds in Kenya under the personal and direct supervision of William Ruto. I must say Kenyans are not safe, our children are not safe, investors are not safe, tourists are not safe, no foreigner is safe. And I must say, foreigners, investors, tourists, your own security starts with you. I ask the members of our development partners and foreign embassies accredited to Kenya to ensure that their staff and citizens are safe within the boundaries of Kenya. Patriotic Kenyans, historically, land is one of the most emotive issues in Kenya. Mr. William Ruto has promised to settle all historical land injustices in Kenya and resettle millions of squatters across the country. Unfortunately, he has scored the lowest in this matter and created many war fronts on the land question. Over the last 4 years, William Ruto and his cronies have been involved in an historic high-level grabbing of land and misuse of public lands. For instance, 2,800 acres have been grabbed by Ruto and his cronies in Kebiko, Kajiado. 6,000 acres of land in Owasso Kidwang in Suswa has been grabbed. 5,000 acres of land, or Kyobo in the Masai Mara, has been grabbed. 1,000 acres of land for Puko and Limanet within Narok Township has been grabbed. Over 7,000 acres of land of Olokuto adjudication section in Narok North. Kehoto land, about 300 landowners risk being thrown out of their 700 acres of land. Davivi land in Aviation has been grabbed by William Ruto. He has put up a home and he is growing wheat and maize in the farm. Banita settlement scheme, 14,000 acres of land have been grabbed. Olongai land, about 167,000 people are at the risk of eviction as this land is being grabbed. Egerton University land, Oscar Sudi, Samburu, and William Ruto have grabbed 2,000 acres of land meant for the university where they are doing wheat farming. On matters of environment, this administration had committed to grow 15 billion trees by the year 2032. What we are witnessing is the lifting of the logging ban and the systematic logging in national forests under the cover of the Kenya Forest Service. Numerous court cases have been filed by international conservation groups Greenbelt and the Law Society of Kenya against the government's attempt to develop, build infrastructure in protected natural habitats. Talanta Stadium and Bomas Conference Center Link Road that will see over 100 acres of forest destroyed. Upper Imend Forest in Meru is being cleared for the construction of a state lodge, a golf course, and an airstrip, which will excise and clear 200 acres of forest. Where was this promise? Even the trees at the gate of State House have been cut. Is this still part of the growing 15 billion trees? 4 years later, today, Mr. William Ruto has betrayed the trust bestowed on him by the people of Kenya, betrayed the fruits and the foundation of our nation that have been built by previous administrations under the various development blueprints such as Vision 2030. He has eroded the democratic gains of multipartyism and swallowed political parties and the then opposition. As he once wondered as deputy president, who is government and who is opposition? He then said it was a mongrel of a government. Today, we have a mongrel of a government. There has been attempts by the National Intelligence Service, by William Ruto's handlers, to get to know the contents of my address before I do it, and they have been unsuccessful. And I did the statement myself, and Mama Boys typed it for me. So, William Ruto and your people, unless you can get through to Mama Boys, you cannot get to know the content of what I need to say. But what I'll say is informed by input from leaders, from the people of Kenya, and you'll hear it for the first time.